February 22nd, 2025, and we're now in the second half of our winter retreat period. A very precious time that we have every year here at Abhayagiri. So we'll continue to be in retreat and focusing more on the roots of cultivating the wholesome, relinquishing the unwholesome, and we'll be practicing in this more focused way until March 31st. And then we'll go back into that, the more, ordinary time of the year. It's been 9 months a year in one way, and then we have 3 months, the winter retreat, living in this other way, in this other mode. And the retreat crew is looking after the kitchen and maintenance tasks in the monastery. And really, during the winter retreat, we're still doing a lot of the basic same things. For example, things don't stop breaking in the monastery just because it's winter retreat. In fact, it seems like things break more during the winter retreat. So having to continue to fix heaters and air circulating systems in the monastery, just looking after these facilities. The facilities now are so much different than they were back in the old days, back when I got here in year 5 of Abhayagiri, so that was in 2001. I guess you could say that was the old days of Abhayagiri. Back when we had where the bell tower is now, we had the little house that got torn down in 2016, but everything happened there, and it was a much smaller space, and different things broke back then. There were things we had to deal with back then, having an old house, and many of you have probably heard these stories about what it was like just with these basic facilities. There was what used to be the kitchen pantry, the dry storage, was a dilapidated, detached bedroom from this house. And I believe it was when I was a novice, we eventually tore this place down. And it was just considered that this type of cleaning, so we do a lot of cleaning here. So there was no way to clean it, so just get rid of it. So just the whole place was inherently unclean. So just had to throw the whole thing out. So when we finally had a new dry storage pantry, which has now migrated to become the boot room, but that does still exist. That was the kitchen pantry for a long time. But when we tore this original kitchen pantry down, any of you who've come to meditate here in the morning times or in the early afternoon will have heard the woodpeckers pecking away on this building. And it really echoes and reverberates through the hall because they're just slamming their head against the outside and digging holes out there and storing their acorns. And so this original kitchen pantry that we had, the woodpeckers had been pecking on it for who knows how many decades. And they were dropping their acorns in for a long time and using it as their granary for a long time. And so when we finally went to tear this place down, then we started on the inside. And I just remember there was this really thin kind of wood composite siding on the inside of this building, and just kind of taking one of the panels from the top and just ripping it down. And it was revealed that there was actually no insulation in the building, and it was insulated with acorns, and the entire frame was completely full of acorns. And it was almost like some sort of cartoon or something. It's like pull the siding off, and the acorns just kind of spilled out, and we ended up having, I think it was 2 truckloads of just acorns. And they'd just been popping those acorns in there, and they would just fall to the bottom, and eventually they filled up. And I guess when they filled up, then they were able to access them somehow. But just that sense of cleaning, we just had to throw the whole thing out. There was no cleaning it. So sometimes to get clean, we just have to throw something out. We can't keep it anymore. And sometimes when we see things that we've been holding on to for a long time, we shouldn't keep holding on to them if they're doing harm to us or if they're unclean in some way. And there might be a sense that we want to hold on to things just because we've held on to them for a long time already. So if we have held on to something for a long time already, we might feel that we need to keep holding on just because we've been holding on for so long already. But that's certainly not the way to practice. And when we see that something's harmful, even if we've been holding on to it for decades, it's good just to let it go right then and there. Just be done with it. Or if we see that we've been going down a wrong path for however many decades, it doesn't matter. Once we realize we're going down that wrong path, just turn around, find the right path. So everything like this, we can reflect on it and use it for the sake of practice. So something we're trying to do during the winter retreat is dig a little deeper in our minds, in our hearts, in our sense of training. And thinking about 2017, I was in Thailand for a 1.5 year period before coming back to take up more duties here at Abhayagiri, and was helping replace the dyeing shed stove in Wat Pah Nanachat's dyeing shed. They had this old stove. There was an issue in their dyeing shed that they've got 20 to 30 monks at any given time, and they've got this dyeing shed stove, but then the dyeing shed was very, very small, so it's still kind of the original or almost the original structure that it was when the monastery was built. Now, 50 years ago, this is 50 years since Wat Pah Nanachat was established. So that dyeing shed was probably built in some of those first years, maybe not right in the first year, but very early on. And it had a few different incarnations, but they were all quite small. So you would have monks trying to do robe washing. They have a weekly robe washing day where the robes are dyed with the gankanu and the heartwood of the jackfruit tree dye, and they boil up some wash water. It's a weak solution of dye. It has a nice fresh smell to it, and it's got a disinfecting quality as well. So then you take that and you pour it over your robe, saturate it just enough, and then there's these hardwood basins that you kind of, in Thai they use the onomatopoeia, they call it choop. So you choop, choop, choop. You wash your robe by just agitating the wash water into it, and that gets the robes clean and fresh. But there would be 20 or 30 monks there filing through. There was this corridor in the dyeing shed that was maybe 3 feet wide. You get 20 or 30 monks at robe washing day trying to file through there, and you get people running into each other, and then you get, it was a bit cramped. Sometimes there was some strong energy, sometimes arguments about whatever was it was just really too constrained. So a few of us saw that, this could make it a little bit more convenient. This could be a project, increase the size of the dyeing shed. And the stoves were also very old, so replace those old dyeing shed stoves. But that entailed some demolition work. We had to demolish these stoves that were really built out of concrete and steel. And once we demolished one of the stoves, it was revealed that there had been a previous stove below it. And so it was almost like an archaeological dig. And then some soldiers came to help with this. We needed to get the jackhammers out, do some more demolition work. And says, oh, that's interesting. There was a previous incarnation of the dying shit stove. So let's get that gone as well. There was the kind of remnants of it from before. And then we dug the previous one away, and there was a previous one under it. It had actually been more dying shed stoves than we had imagined. And so we said, okay, well let's keep digging. Let's get down to the dirt. And I think that was it. There's three. We demolished the dying shed stove and then two previous foundations for one, so we were able to get down to the dirt, down to the bottom of it, and then start fresh. Start from a clean foundation. And we were able to pour something that was very stable and that worked very well in the end. So that's really what we're trying to do in practice, is digging down. And why can't the heart settle? And why can't there just be that sense of everything's okay? So sometimes we have to dig down and see what are the causes of these things. So dukkha is the sense of unsatisfactoriness that we're trying to deal with here. A sense that things aren't quite right, or that something is wrong, or there's just an underlying sense of dis-ease. That's what we call dukkha in the Pali language. And then the root quality we have in the suttas, in the dependent origination, the Buddha's teachings on paticca samuppada, on dependent origination or dependent co-arising. Then Saddha, this quality of Saddha, is actually the beginning of getting out of dukkha. So Saddha is normally translated as faith. And sometimes there's an alternate translation of confidence, that we have confidence in something, we have confidence in the teachings, confidence in Buddha Dhamma Sangha, confidence in the efficacy of the mindfulness practice that we're doing, confidence that it's going to alleviate or end some of our suffering. And I've been reflecting on this word saddha as trust, and using trust as a translation, because trust is so applicable. And it's not just say, trust me, I know what I'm doing. It's trust in our own awareness. There's the Longpa Sumedho teaching, trusting in being awareness. And I think when we come to the meditation practice, and especially when we do a lot of meditation during the winter retreat, it's going to be essential to develop that sense of trust in the meditation and trust in awareness. And if we aren't able to develop that sense of trust, the mind's just not going to settle. The heart's just not going to settle. We have to be able to trust to the point where we can really say and believe it, that everything's okay in this moment, right now. Everything is really, really okay. And there's no problems, there's no worries. And then the dis-ease comes when there are the problems, there are the worries, there are the very real things happening, that the cruelty in the world and injustice and so on, that I need to think about and ponder and feel uneasy about. And the heart can't settle. There's a wholesome aspect to it. I want there to not be suffering and tragedy around me or in the world in general. So there's a wholesome aspect to that. We want to end suffering. But then the ending of suffering, we need to start with that trust. We need to start with the trust in being awareness, the trust in the present, the trust that everything's okay, or at least okay enough right now while we're here in this hall. And just allowing ourselves to trust. It takes courage just to allow ourselves to trust in the moment. And then that is even a technique we can use is tell ourselves, everything's okay, everything's okay. Everything's really okay, everything's really, really okay. That's a technique that we can use. And the heart can settle. I had this experience while, it's actually how I got hooked in going to practice at the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya. Ajahn Kevali, the abbot of Wat Pah Nanachat, was kind enough to invite me on a 4 holy sites tour to see to visit the Buddha's birthplace, the place where the Buddha was enlightened, the place where the Buddha gave his first teaching, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, and then the place where the Buddha passed away. These are considered the 4 main holy sites. They're called the Chatura Sangvejaniya Saddha. So those are the 4 great places which inspire faith, and or inspire confidence, or inspire trust. And then, because from Thailand you fly into Bodh Gaya these days, we started and ended in Bodh Gaya, where the Bodhi tree is, we call the Vajrasana, or the seat of awakening, the seat of enlightenment, where the Buddha actually became the Buddha and attained enlightenment almost 2,600 years ago. Then being there is very, very powerful, and just doing some meditation there, I found couldn't quite know what it was. There was a lot of noise, a lot of people around, dogs, dust, filth, just a lot of noise, cacophony, just some chanting sounds really good, some of the chanting sounds absolutely awful, and so many people, and just feeling so peaceful and meditating there. And that was when I decided to be able to stay on 3 more weeks and do some meditation practice at the Bodhi tree, and do a self-meditation retreat there at the Bodhi tree with all these people, with all this noise. And that first day, just sitting and not expecting anything special in particular, but just doing a sit and focusing on the breath and on Buddho, and a strong voice coming up in my mind just saying, everything's okay right now. And that's good. It's good. I like that. And then it wasn't really a voice, but it was experienced as a voice. It said, no, you don't get it. Everything is okay. Everything's really okay. I feel the heart, I feel the mind settling. And then it's kind of, it's like, no. You have to know that everything is absolutely okay. Everything's absolutely okay. The heart settling a little bit more. And then I was hooked. I was hooked on going to meditate there. Of course, that's not that happened all the time, but it was an experience that was helpful, that I found helpful, that I can think about anytime. I can recollect it and think about it any time, and think when I don't think things are okay. Can I get into that space where it is okay? Everything is as it should be in the moment. Maybe everything's okay isn't always the right phrase, but everything is as it should be in this moment, based on all the causes and conditions, based on my own intentionality. That's karma. Based on my own intentions, whether wholesome or unwholesome, based on the past karma, the past action, body, speech, and mind. Everything in this moment is exactly as it should be, and it can't be any other way. So why resist? Then there's the voice, okay, well, but you have to cultivate these different things. The Buddha said in the suttas, you have to bring this and that into being, and so on. But the longer I am able to practice, the more it seems that allowing myself to trust and say that everything's okay in the moment is the way that those wholesome states come into being. So doing that over a period of time, then we can give rise to all sorts of wholesome mental states and a sense of ease and sustainable well-being. And as some people might experience states of great bliss and things like that, and I don't envy that, actually. I think sustainable well-being, sustainable ease, that trends upward over time, that's I think, a good way forward, a good way to practice. So when we practice in the monastery and we do these cleaning, the kitchen cleanup has to happen every day, and we clean this hall once a week. We do a deep clean on this hall. We clean the bhikkhu's common area up above once a week. And it can be quite a delightful experience when we really get into it. In just the same way, practice can be a really delightful experience when we really get into it, when we really surrender to it, and we really focus on things. And when we clean things, and we clean in a very thorough way, I found we tend to discover things. So you might find that thing that you dropped 2 years ago and you couldn't find. You might find it if you clean your room really, really thoroughly. I was cleaning one of the rooms here the other day in the monastery, and I found a wireless earbud, and it was obvious, and it was in a place that hadn't been mopped or dusted in a very long time. And it was an earbud that Long Pa had lost about a year ago. And it was kind of, it's too bad I lost that earbud. And maybe looked for it for a period of time and just not found it, but it had, sometimes we just need to, and Long Pa can't do this because of his body, but for those of us who are still temporarily able-bodied, then sometimes have to just get down on our hands and knees and clean the floor that way. And then we find all sorts of things. We find more than if we're standing and just mopping the floor in a cursory manner. Sometimes we actually have to get down on our hands and knees and get all those corners, get the trim. I've heard, he of course, Long Pa is not like this now. He's a gentle grandfather monk now, but back when he was the abbot of Wat Pah Nanachat, I heard that he was so intent on the cleanliness and getting everybody to keep everything very clean, and he'd go to some of the trim and kind of run his finger over it to kind of test if people were cleaning things properly. And that's great if we're able to clean everything to be that spotless, and then the dust settles again. We've got to wipe it off again, clean it again. And if we do the cleaning slowly and mindfully as a practice, and we're not just going through the motions, it can be quite a delightful experience. It can really be a great adornment to our practice. Or we might take these daily things that we do, the bowl washing, for example, or the dishes. We can get really into the dishes, really into a sense of enjoyment cleaning the dishes, and not that we're doing it in some sort of really, really slow, quote-unquote, mindful way, but cleaning the dishes thoroughly, carefully, and the bowl washing, bowl setup that the monastics do, that the bhikkhus, the novices, anagarikas, do every day. Then there's these standards of the Ajahn Chah standard, which we don't necessarily follow here, but we have these ties on our bowls. So our bowl covers, most of them are crocheted, and then we have these wooden, we call bowl ears, and then there's this cord that we tie the strap on. The strap is what allows us to hold our bowl during alms round. And then it would be to actually untie the cord completely, and then neatly fold and roll up the bowl cover. And it doesn't make so much sense to do it that way in a practical or worldly way of thinking. Neatly fold it up, place it neatly in its spot in the cubby, and then have all the eating accoutrements, utensils, and so on kind of neatly placed next to it, and whatever bags or things that aren't put out the meal neatly placed next to the bowl cover. And then when the meal is finished and the bowl has been washed, dried, and put in the sun, if the sun is out, the bowl is put in the sun for a few minutes, and then actually putting the cover back on and carefully making sure the cover is on the bowl evenly, and tying the tie neatly so that it's tight, and so the bowl strap isn't flopping around, and then refastening the bowl cover and the bowl to the bowl stand, and then neatly folding the bowl strap and with the lid on top of it, and then the last part of the bowl strap goes over the lid and then back in, so that the bowl lid is propped up so that air can still circulate through the bowl in case there was any moisture left in it, or any smell that might be residual there can escape. And then if the bowl is then neatly placed back in the cubby, and if we do it that way, it can be a very enjoyable experience that we can have a sense of wholesome pride about. On the flip side of that, if we just do our bowl washing in a perfunctory way, not really focusing on what we're doing or the task at hand, then the final result of that is the bowl's just going to be tossed back in, and there's going to be things just kind of cluttered, and it's not going to be pleasing to the eye. And the same as if we do anything, say the cleaning in the Dhamma hall here, or when we do the deep clean, the kitchen cleanup once a week, then things could be done in a perfunctory way, and it might be good enough. Or we can take it to that next level and actually get down on our hands and knees and go into those corners that don't get cleaned. And if we do that, we might make some discoveries. So of course, it's the same with the mind. Then when we look into the mind, and we look at those places we might not want to look, and we might need to crawl into those corners we don't normally crawl into, and we're going to discover things. We're going to see things we haven't seen before, and we're going to be able to deal with things that we haven't dealt with before. Maybe we haven't been wanting to deal with things, or face certain fears or anxieties that we have, or just maybe acknowledge mistakes we've made, acknowledge ways we could perhaps do things better. Or there might be some nagging memory coming up in the meditation that we may have just been pushing aside and going back to the breath, going back to Buddho, going back to our meditation object, but it keeps coming up over and over again, so it needs some attention. Maybe there's some sort of nagging doubt. Maybe they're not teaching the Dhamma here. Maybe this isn't actually right. And maybe I should go somewhere else, try someone else, some other place. Maybe this isn't quite right, and if am I just wasting my time here, just kind of trying to follow the teachings here and the practice here? Is this right? Is this actually going to lead to liberation? Is it actually efficacious? So that's the doubt. The doubt comes up and it takes us away. So having the courage to trust, I would say trust is the opposite of doubt. Trust is a conviction in the efficacy of the mindful awareness that we can come back to at any time in the present. I read this introduction to the large book called Buddha Dhamma by Prapayuto, who's now, his title is Somdet Buddha Gosajan, I believe. And he, in his introduction, there was a phrase that really jumped out at me, and this was that Buddhism is a religion, but it's a training of body, speech, and mind. You can say it's a religion, but in its core, it's a training of body, speech, and mind. And it's a training that can be accessed anytime. It's a training that's accessible anytime. There's no prerequisite necessarily for just being able to come back to awareness anytime. Another aspect of Buddhism is that it encompasses all of society. So he quotes that the teaching being complete when there's monks, nuns, male and female lay followers who have gained insight into the teachings, all four of these groups. Not just that they exist, but in all four of those groups there are people who fully understand the teachings and have gained insight into the teachings and have reached the goal of the teachings, Nibbana, in all four of those groups. Or at least one of the four stages of Nibbana, the stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, or arahant. I think if we aren't able to yet have trust, then meeting somebody, I've been recollecting Longpa Liam quite a bit these days, and meeting somebody like that can definitely help. And for our own teachers, Ajahn Pasano, Ajahn Amaro, who were able to live and study with Ajahn Chah. But we have Longpa Liam. We still have these great disciples of Longpa Chah. So meeting somebody like that, meeting these great teachers, can give us this sense that it is possible. Sometimes we doubt, well, I believe it's possible, I trust that it's possible, but it's not possible for me. I don't know if I can do it. They really do teach over and over again, these great ajahns. They just teach us over and over again that it is possible. It is possible. If it wasn't possible, the Buddha wouldn't have bothered to teach. If it wasn't possible, or if it was just for a select few, then these great ajahns of the past, they wouldn't have bent over backwards to teach everybody. They wouldn't have expended so much energy to try to teach people. But it is possible, and the Buddha, when he started teaching, he saw for himself that it is possible, that people did understand the teachings, people could train their minds. It's actually one of the wonderful and marvelous qualities of the Dhamma, is the Dhamma teaches us to go against our desires, and it's a wonderful and marvelous thing that people actually want to do it. People actually want to hear it, want to listen to it. How amazing that we're actually willing to listen to and delight in a teaching that tells us to go against our desires, or at least call them into question, and to see the suffering in them, inherent in them. This is amazing that people would actually want to hear this. We're not like monkeys. We're not like the monkeys in India. They're just kind of every monkey for themselves. The monkeys in India are very vicious, and that's actually something we have to warn our upcoming India pilgrims about, is the monkeys. Be careful of the monkeys. They're very vicious, and they're mean to each other as well. They're not just mean to people. And I remember being again on this Four Holy Sites tour with the Wapananashak community. We were in Savatthi, Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's Park. It's a very nice place, even now, a very nice place to hang out, to do some meditation. There's a lot of monkeys, though, and sometimes these monkeys, there are actually Indian guards there who will beat them away with a stick if they come close to you, but sometimes they make them pass the guards, and they can be dangerous. And I remember sitting there and watching these monkeys, and there was a 20 or 30 foot tall pillar, just remnants of some old monastery there, and a monkey had climbed up it and was just sitting on top. And the top of the pillar, there was room for maybe 2 or 3 monkeys on top. So this monkey was just sitting on top, and it was kind of cold outside. It was just sitting in the sun. It looked fairly calm, and then another monkey climbed up the pillar, and it just sat next to that first monkey. And then the monkey that had just climbed up just took its arm and just pushed the other monkey, and it fell really far, and it was screaming, and it was really horrible to witness. And then that other monkey just happily sat there. So we don't want to be like that. We don't want to be like monkeys. So we want to be humans. And if sharing is a quality of our humanity, sharing, generosity. I've heard stories of monkeys just going up to people and demanding food, and if you don't give it to them, they'll bite you. And so have to be careful, have to be cautious. Some animals do seem to be able to exhibit compassion. Dogs, for example, might have some of these human-like qualities. And perhaps there are some good monkeys out there. I'm sure all these monkeys are individuals. They all have their own karma, and hopefully some of them are giving rise to wholesome mental states. But I think for the most part, they're operating on automatic. It's every monkey for himself. So we definitely don't want to be like that. So I have seen that we are very human-like here. People are helping each other out all the time. And we become habituated to generosity, and this can become more clear during the winter retreat. The generosity, the giving, the helpfulness, it all becomes habitual. We're making offerings all the time. We're asking how we can help all the time. Every day, on a daily basis, we're doing this. This is amazing. This is amazing that we have a place where we can do this, where we can cultivate these attitudes. It's not that common in the world, I think, that we have the opportunity to be generous every day, to be helpful every day, to give offerings every day. That's not at all common. So thinking like this can give rise to a sense of piti sukha and also gratitude, a strong sense of gratitude and appreciation for what we have. That can also help with the trust. Things aren't perfect. There's no perfect conditions, but they're good enough. They're good enough to be okay in the present. So as we continue on the winter retreat, we have this more open period. So we just finished 3 weeks of having practice in just the morning time, and then open afternoons and no evening pujas. Now we have got the open mornings, and then practice through the afternoon and the evening puja. And so the feeling of the retreat is going to shift again. with those long open afternoons, sometimes it's easy to drift if we don't have a strong foundation in our practice. It's easy to drift or to seek distraction in various ways, and I know how that is for myself. And coming back to practice in the afternoons, we have the open morning, which is a really lovely time to be in the forest, especially at spring, this kind of springtime energy and the smells and the wildflowers starting to come out. Just a wonderful time to be in the forest in the morning time. And then coming down here and practicing in the afternoon. And when we really put effort into the practice throughout the afternoon, when we practice sitting and walking meditation for the whole afternoon, our practice will become strong when we do that on a regular basis. Our practice will become quite a bit stronger. And there could be a resistance sometimes to meditating 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m., and so on. Around 3 p.m. or 4 p.m., the energy can start to shift and things can feel a little bit more bright, a little bit more clear in the mind. But then actually when we do the meditation in that early afternoon period, maybe we take a short rest after the mealtime and then come back for the meditation. When we put effort in those particular hours, I do think that builds a very strong foundation. The meditation itself, 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m., it's not always going to be that glorious or bright or clear light of awareness type meditations. It's just going to be, there's going to be some hindrances coming up, and it's okay. We learn about them. It's okay. We put in that time and put in that effort, and we're going to reap the benefits of that come evening puja, for example. If we've been practicing through the afternoon, through the day, the quality of the meditation is going to be better if we've done some meditation in that early afternoon period. So to not shy away from meditating at those times just because we might feel a little bit tired or dull or there's some hindrances, we might think, well, it's probably better if I just don't meditate at this time because the hindrances are present. But when the hindrances are present is when we meditate. Then we can learn about them and how to work with them. And it's dukkha as well. It's just part of being a human. It's part of having these bodies and minds. Things can't be good all the time. But there can be a sense of practicing in a way that we have sustainable well-being. And the more we trust in awareness, the more sustainable it will be. So these are just some thoughts, some reflections as we get deeper into the second half of our winter retreat, and I'll leave it there for this evening.